All right, let's get right into it. We're about to unpack a universe of fiction that kind of collapses in on itself. It's a story that's dense, it's surreal, and honestly, it's a total mind-bender. Welcome to our deep dive into the novel, The Basis.
So the story kicks off with a bang, and I mean that literally. An author, Ganatha, is just sitting in his study when the doorbell rings. He opens it, and there's a woman holding a gun. But it's her accusation that's the real weapon. She looks him dead in the eye and says, "You wrote about a real character, hiding behind the curtain of fiction status. Why did you do that to me?"
You see, this woman, who calls herself Lady X, is claiming she's a character Ganatha created 13 years ago, and yeah, she is not happy about it. This whole opening scene just throws us headfirst into the novel's central, absolutely wild question. What happens when this story decides to fight back?
So, for our first section, let's dive into that revenge. We really need to unpack the story of this mysterious Lady X to get what's driving her to do all this.
Okay, so Lady X lays out this absolutely devastating history. She says his writing made her life, and I'm quoting here, miserable to the point of death. In the story he wrote for her, she fell hard for a guy who was pretending to be a human rights activist. Turns out, it was all just a scam to get political asylum in the US. And she was so head over heels that she sold her only real asset, land she'd inherited, to help him escape. And what does he do? He takes the money, vanishes, and leaves her with absolutely nothing.
She expresses this trauma with this really powerful metaphor from physics. She says, "I felt like Schrodinger's cat. I was both alive and dead at the same time." And that feeling, being stuck in this limbo state, not one thing or the other, that becomes a huge theme that echoes through the entire novel. Which brings us perfectly to our second section, Worlds Within Worlds. Because this isn't just about one woman's revenge anymore. Her personal crisis is actually our doorway into a much, much bigger conflict about the very nature of reality, which in this book is made up of multiple stacked worlds. So the book lays out this whole structure of existence called the Kamaloka, which you can see right here. It's got all these different realms, from the human world all the way down to an inferno. But here's the key idea in that second column. Each realm is defined by how many time dimensions it has. That number, from +1 down to -3, literally dictates what kind of experience and suffering you're going to have in each world.
And to show you just how bizarre these different dimensions can get, the novel contrasts our world with this surreal state called Tarantino Land. In our world, physics is pretty stable, and we expect news to be factual. But in Tarantino Land, news is delivered as musical poetry, just for entertainment. Their money is based on something called the Gabriel's Horn model, which lets them print infinite cash without causing inflation. It's a complete satire of a world where reality and performance are the exact same thing. So you're probably asking, okay, how does a universe like this actually work? Well, our third section, The Physics of Reality, shows how the novel uses concepts from modern physics as this powerful metaphorical toolkit to explain it all.
First up is the many worlds theory. The book really leans into this idea that every single choice, every possibility, causes the entire universe to split. Just think about that. It means there are countless parallel realities branching off from each other every single second, and all of them are real.
Next, it pulls in the observer effect from quantum mechanics. Now that's the principle that just the act of looking at something fundamentally changes it. In the world of The Basis, they take this idea and just run with it. Reality isn't some fixed, solid thing out there. It's more like a sea of possibilities that only snaps into a single state when a conscious mind actually looks at it.
Okay, so how do you get between all these worlds? The novel introduces this fascinating tool, mimicry. It's described as this natural, powerful way to learn and understand things. By imitating something, you can grasp its very essence, and, in this universe, you can even travel between these different realms. It's basically the key to navigating this whole multiverse of stories.
Which leads us to Section 4. An author's delirium. Because when you have a multiverse, quantum observers, and reality-bending mimicry all in play, well, these huge, mind-bending ideas start to have a direct impact on the character's sanity, on their very sense of who they are.
So let's go back to that living room. Ganatha is basically a prisoner in his own house.
But Lady X isn't just holding him at gunpoint, she's forcing him on this twisted philosophical journey through the nature of reality itself. And under all that pressure, his own subjective world begins to completely fall apart.
And then it gets even weirder. While Ganatha is trapped, his friends Ron Champ and Tharaka experience something completely impossible. They literally see their own eyes turn into tiny television screens, broadcasting Ganatha's terrifying ordeal to them in real time. The barrier between their minds is just dissolving.
This, of course, leads to one of the most chilling questions in the whole book. I mean, if one person's reality can be streamed directly into someone else's eyeballs, where does one mind even end and another begin? Is there a difference at all?
And now for our final section. The story that writes itself. Because this total collapse of individual reality, it leads us straight to the novel's ultimate theme. That timeless battle between the creator and their creation, the story and the storyteller. The final twist comes when Lady X reveals how she knows Gananatha's deepest, darkest thoughts. She claims that in another world, another one of those infinite realities, she and the author actually shared the same soul, the same dreams. The line between them doesn't just get blurry, it's dawn. She's not just his character. On some deep, fundamental level, she is him.
And from that stunning revelation, the novel makes this, well, it's almost an accusation about fiction itself. It says, all authors who create fictitious worlds using words of language will be found to be liars. The very act of creation, it suggests, is an act of deception, and it has consequences that ripple out through reality.
And that leaves us with one last provocative question that just hangs over everything. Lady X's revenge isn't just against an author, it's against the very act of being written, of being controlled by someone else's narrative. It forces us, and you, to ask, in a world that's literally made of stories, who is really holding the pen?